You are pretty much aware of the context that we exist in, a context in which the narrative has been peddled wrongly, particularly by intellectual hyenas, particularly by crocodile revolutionaries, who have labeled human rights defenders to be puppets of the West, human rights defenders to be terrorists, human rights defenders to be regime change agents. But what is wrong about regime change? It's a topic for another day. If I may, I'll just read out a few statistics that will make you at least enlightened to worry about the context of the globe. In the year 2021, the frontline defenders stated that 40% of the attacks against human rights defenders targeted women, with a significant portion of these attacks being gender-based violence. Amnesty International in 2022 reported that youth activists, particularly those involved in climate justice and political reform, are increasingly being targeted. In 2020, over 30% of youth climate activists reported being harassed or threatened online or offline for their activism. The Human Rights Watch in 2022 reported that in 2021, over 300 human rights defenders were killed globally, with the majority being environmental defenders, often fighting against land grabs, deforestation, or mining projects. My end point: human rights defenders are not merely activists. They are custodians of our collective dignity. To silence them is to erase the very principles from which democracy lies. You talk about democracy as a government for the people, by the people. But the moment we label human rights defenders, then we have done wrong, and we are not doing justice, be it to history and to the future, but most importantly, to the present society. The first point I would make for you to realize human rights defenders as human beings who only care about society is how human rights defenders are critical mobilizers in public engagement and civic participation. Most organizations, when there is a policy, when there is a bill, are in the communities trying to mobilize the ordinary person on the ground for them to participate, for them to have an enlightened mindset. You know particularly well that the only power that we can have against oppression is an informed citizenry. So the moment we don't inform the citizens, then we are selling out the struggle that we have. The legitimacy of any government is tested not by its ability to govern through force, but in its willingness to safeguard those who challenge the injustices. Human rights defenders are architects of humane societies, and protection is the foundation of authentic governance. Myself, being abducted and tortured at the age of 20, representing the Zimbabwe National Students' Union, a students' movement with a vision to create an inclusive and democratic Zimbabwe, with students as integral stakeholders, where student concerns are upheld and academic freedoms promoted. Mine as a president was just to voice in and lead the National Executive Council for us to attain academic freedom in Zimbabwe. But after that, the regime in Zimbabwe sees it fit to respond with torture, with unjust arrests. As I speak right now, the students who are now in the students' movement are not spared from such tortures. Are they not human rights defenders? Because Section 75 of the Zimbabwean Constitution speaks through to two things: the accessibility and affordability of education. And if I'm on the forefront to defend those rights, I've done nothing wrong. I'm just simply but standing for the oppressed. And this is what I believe in as a human rights defender. I believe that given a chance for us to spend the rest of our lives kneeling, at least I'm going to die trying to stand up. I believe that the moment you sign up to become a human rights defender in an authoritarian regime, Your fear for three things should disappear like a moth drawn to the flames. Your fear for the prison, your fear for the hospital, and your fear for the cemetery. The reason why I make mention to such is particularly because in a world where there are boundaries of injustices and they are often blurred with politics and power, human rights defenders are the unwavering compass guiding society back to its moral core. Governments must not only tolerate but empower these societies, for in their resistance lies the true measure of a nation's commitment to freedom. Existing is one thing when we talk about human rights defenders. We are saying we want to recognize human rights defenders as legitimate actors in society. That is fine. But to me, as a student of politics, I believe firmly that existing is only instinctual. It's only instinctual, with the primary goal of getting to the next day without regards to quality. I submit unto you today that not only should we see and recognize human rights defenders as legitimate actors, human rights defenders should also be empowered by governments of the day.